What would you do if the man you loved laughed while his father branded you a gold digger? I stood there, frozen, as the words cut through the air like a blade. My fiancé, Ethan, chuckled nervously, his eyes darting away from mine. His father, Mr. Harrington, leaned back in his leather chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. The dining room, with its crystal chandelier and polished mahogany, felt like a courtroom, and I was on trial. I wasn't born into their world of old money and older grudges, but I loved Ethaner, so I thought. That moment, though, planted a seed of doubt, and what grew from it changed everything. My name is Lila, and I came from nothing. A small-town girl with big dreams. I worked my way through college, scraping by on scholarships and late-night diner shifts. Ethan was different, charming, kind, an heir to the Harrington fortune. We met at a charity gala where I was serving drinks, not sipping them. He saw me, really saw me, and for a while, I believed love could bridge any gap. But that night at his family's estate, I realized love wasn't enough for them. To Mr. Harrington, I was a leech, a nobody chasing his son's wealth. And Ethan? His laughter told me he wasn't ready to fight for me. I could have cried. I could have stormed out. Instead, I smiled, excused myself, and let the sting of their words fuel a plan. If they thought I was a gold digger, I'd play the part not for their money, but for my dignity. I wasn't going to beg for their approval. I'd show them I could stand taller than their accusations. The next morning, I started my transformation. I'd always been resourceful, but now I weaponized it. I used my savings to invest in myself new clothes, a polished look, and a crash course in high society's unwritten rules. I networked relentlessly, leveraging Ethan's connections without his knowledge. I attended galas, luncheons, and boardroom meetings, presenting myself as a savvy entrepreneur with a vision. I pitched ideas to investors, drawing on my years of grit and hustle. Within months, I'd secured funding for a Startuple luxury lifestyle brand that turned heads. I called it Aurum, Latin for gold, a nod to their insult and my triumph. Ethan noticed the change. He'd call, confused, asking why I was so distant. I'd smile through the phone, keeping him at arm's length, letting him wonder. His father, meanwhile, watched my rise with growing unease. At a gala, I overheard him whisper to a friend, "She's smarter than I thought." I didn't care for his approval anymore. I was building something bigger than their judgment. My brand took off. Aurum became a name synonymous with elegance and ambition, featured in magazines and worn by influencers. I was no longer the waitress in a borrowed dress. I was Lila Voss, CEO. The irony wasn't lost on Mebby playing their game. I'd outgrown their world. But the real test came at Ethan's birthday party, hosted at the same estate where I'd been humiliated. I arrived in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, my confidence a quiet fire. Ethan's eyes widened as I walked in, and Mr. Harrington's jaw tightened. The room buzzed with whispers about my success. During dinner, Ethan raised a glass, his voice unsteady. "To Lila," he said, "who's proven us all wrong." I smiled, but my heart wasn't in it. The man I'd once loved hadn't stood by me when it mattered. His toast felt hollow. Later, Mr. Harrington cornered me. "You've done well," he said, his tone begrudging. "But don't think this changes who you are." I looked him in the eye, unflinching. "I know exactly who I am," I replied. "And it's not the caricature you painted." I walked away, head high, leaving him silent. That night, I ended things with Ethan. Not out of spite, but because I'd outgrown him too. He begged me to stay, promising to stand up to his father, but it was too late. I didn't need his validation or his family's wealth. I'd built my own empire, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. As I drove away from the estate, the weight of their judgment lifted. I wasn't a gold digger. I was a gold maker, forging my own path from the ashes of their doubt. The world I'd once envied now admired me, but more importantly, I admired myself. I'd turned their insult into my strength, and that was worth more than all the riches they could offer. The lesson wasn't about revenge, it was about resilience. When the world calls you names, you don't shrink, you rise. You take their words, reshape them, and build something extraordinary. I did just that, and in the end, the only approval I needed was my own.